Okay, let's go back to A.Webster in the Sutton Congress of '99, which he won. So I just like Webster's style of play and opening choices, and he was a real expert, I think, with the English opening, but also interchanged it with G3 as we see in this game. So against T.Wall in round 5. Okay, so G3, and I think Norwood also, David Norwood, the British Grandmaster, very, very talented natural player, was also sharing some of Andrew's repertoire. So G3 again, Norwood was playing in quite a few games with great success. So C5, White reserves, the C4 move for the moment. Bishop G2, Knight C6, now Knight F3. So we've got a potential King's Indian type attack system. Knight F6, so sort of King's Indian in reverse as well, you could call this. Now let's move H6. So there's a logical idea that black might want to play G5, then G4, Bishop G7 at some point. G5, as well as potentially exposing black on this diagonal, does weaken F5. And we're going to see some strategy and tactics around this F5 square in this game, which are quite interesting. But first, this diagonal as well is emphasised now with this next move from Andrew. So he's refusing to move stereotypically the C pawn here, or even the D pawn, or anything else. He just moves the B pawn to try and take advantage of that diagonal. Okay, so G5, Bishop B2, Bishop G7. And now another very specific to the position type of move, exploiting that that pin rather on the knight. He plays the move E4, gaining a bit of space in the centre, highlighting the D5 square. Maybe the pawn will threaten E5 at some point. It might be effective. So here, black actually plays G4, a bit cavemanish. I think maybe the presence of Michael Basman in the tournament made everyone a bit crazy. He's playing G4 and G5 in most of his games, grob or grob reversed. So maybe he's inspired people to play G5 more. But it does suffer from this F5 square. Okay, so Knight H4. D6. Actually, I'm not sure Basman was playing this year. Maybe it was the year before. Okay, I might need to check that one out. But Basman has played in this event, and I drew of him actually in this grob game, which I'm not sure I've video annotated yet. But anyway, so Knight A3. So Knight A3, interesting. So not moving a pawn, a bit like the last game we just saw, keeping the configuration intact. That's the key thing. Knights can be manoeuvred around to particular squares, like E3, where it would underline F5, it would join its partner knight, securing F5, but also from E3 it would be eyeing D5. Okay, it's heading for big things from the edge to the centre. Bishop E6, now Knight C4. Does White want to double these pawns? Not particularly, because there'll be a big clamp on the D5 square with these two pawns. B-file might be good. D3, and I think White's not without compensation for the double pawn. So Queen D7 was played. Also, black wants this light square bishop potentially, although it's blocked in by the pawn on G4 at the moment. But he wants to keep hold of F5 as well. So Knight E3, so a nice centralised knight. As a certain positional warmth, which I found in A.Webster's games, which I hope you're going to get from this game. That nice, manoeuvring, delicate pawn moves, carefully configuring the pawns and pieces to work harmoniously together here. So this works. The knight's before that pawn. The pawn's eyeing D5. G2 bishop is also on D5. This nice diagonal. Okay, maybe a tactical vulnerability there. It's unprotected at the moment. That's the only unprotected piece. This knight ready to come into F5 with that G5, G4. It's not so dim on the rim, that one. What does black play here? Black plays actually Rook H7. Curious. What is black playing at? I think actually there was a tactical threat potentially on using this pin, because that bishop was exposed. So black securing his position tactically, just in case there's an event, a horrible event, which might occur to expose it. So now C3 actually, as though D4 has been prepared. Now black strikes in the centre. I think it's T.Wall, the T for Tim, plays D5. So white takes, and after the knight takes, Has black seemingly got a very nice position here. He's created a semi-open D file. He's got a lot of pieces eyeing D4. If you can castle, it might be a very, very pleasant position actually. This could all start to work out kind of well. You can imagine maybe, you know, after castling a move like Rook G8 and Bishop F6 and start attacking this knight and start moving this pawn maybe. All these ambitions are shattered with White's next move, which I think is a very tailored, nice move, offering a very simple game for White to play after. If I give you 10 seconds, can you try and spot what the next move is? So while I'm unpeeling these arrows, might be more than 10 seconds at this rate. Definitely more than 10 seconds. Will this arrow disappear? Yeah. Okay, beautiful move here. Sort of. Bishop takes d5, giving up what what we would normally be a bit paranoid around, not having our king exposed on the light squares. But what's going to exploit this weakness? Nothing, because this pawn is actually shielding the white king kind of cozily. So bishop takes d5, and now we see another cunning little tactical move, tactical stroke positional. Queen b1. So hitting the rook, okay, that's the tactical element of it, but it's also eyeing that critical f5 square. And for some strange reason, black decided to sacrifice a pawn here. Maybe he really didn't like the look of his position if he has to move the rook to h8. There might be queen f5, hitting d5 and g4 at the same time starts to be unpleasant. If queen takes f5, in fact, maybe use this knight to hit g7 and still keep an attack on d5. So black didn't want that. So here he sacks a pawn actually, but it smacks of a bit of desperation. So knight takes, queen takes, white's getting to be a pawn up, but first slips in c4. So not immediately queen takes f5. So is there a reason for that? Why not queen f5 here? It's possible that Andrew didn't want this pawn pinned to his bishop actually, so he gets rid of that issue first. He can win the f5 pawn a bit later. So c4 first, get rid of the g7, then take on f5, clear pawn up. Black's got a bit of a bind on d4 though, so there's still a bit of a battle ahead. How is White going to win this battle? Well, it starts now with putting the knight back on the rim, because White has got the Nimzovician type move f3 coming up. He's going to get the nice slot racers type rook and pawn ending, where he's going to try and mop up some pawns. So f4, White is inviting actually g takes f3, of course, but if the pawn's left there, then f5, maybe rook f4, or maybe just rook e1, or just rook f2. It looks pleasant anyway, but black took. Okay, he's fragmented his pawns a little bit, isolated pawns. Now we see rook e1. Now some nice endgame. Okay, let's rewind there. White e5, white e5. I think black's wanting to get d2 and rook on the 7th, so he didn't think Andrew would take on e5, but Andrew did. So we see this, because rook f2, it's not so bad. And this rook and pawn ending, it's not nice structure, is it? This structure, double pawns, isolated pawn, isolated pawn. This is the type of structure you want when you have the rook and pawn ending. Not all rook and pawn endings are drawn. When your opponent's pawn structure looks like their grandma's teeth, you can probably win this rook and pawn ending. So h4, and Andrew took, check, check, rook a1. So these rooks are all sliding around all over the place, kind of interesting stuff in its own right. So taking on c5, and now it's all about passed pawns and winning pawns and trying to exchange maybe one of the rooks off. But here it doesn't even get to that. Black just threw in the towel here. So interesting game again. This English, or playing g3 to threaten to transpose to the English, is a kind of lazy, talented player's way of playing the game. You don't need to know tons of all this sharp E4 theory, which we've been you know, milked with all this, having to get all the latest stuff and work like crazy before games, and you know, make sure you get your move orders right and all the variations covered of, say, the ultra sharp Sicilian. No, why not just play chess, positional chess? This is what this game's all about. This is why I'm looking at the, you know, positional players now. Let's look at Norwood as well. I think, you know, the lazy positional players. How did they do it? You know, Bishop E6, Knight C4. It's nice little manoeuvres, keeping the pawn structure solid, intact. You know, nice little virtual positional exchange sack, offering that. Usually that bishop's kind of, you wouldn't want to do that, but here F5 is the key problem. Winning a pawn, not letting his bishop be pinned down, you know, the pawn here, so exchanging off bishops first before winning F5, then just outplaying the opponent in this rook and pawn ending. Okay, so there was a little bit of excitement here when black played E5, but he wants to get rid of that isolated pawn. What else could he have done? Looks a bit passive otherwise. Maybe something like rook E3 and rook E1, double up rooks first, then maybe knight E5, and then these two pawns, if would be a problem if there was a rook on E5. So this is the kind of position which would start to be untenable. Supporting D2 first, of course. I think that would be a reasonable plan. So black got a bit more desperate. So this exchange of prisoners here, horrible, wretched pawn structure, and okay, so the king's not afraid to move around in this rook and pawn ending, suffering a few checks, winning a few more pawns, king going to the safety of the queen side. Then that was it. Nice game. Please leave any comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.